Baisai, welcome back this week. Halachos of the Yarmalka Kippah. Why do we wear it? What's up with it? Where's it from? The Reisa, the Rabbanon, Minhag. Did Moshe Rabbeinu wear a yarmulke? Did the Tanaim wear a yarmulke? Did the Amoraim wear a yarmulke? Where did this start? What's the story? What's the history? And what's the halachas? Water park, pool. When do we have to? When do we not have to? Let's get started. Okay. So, Torah. Do we have any psukim? V'yemer Hashem al Moshe sim kippah al roshecha? No, I made that up. Not real. So there's no pasuk about wearing a kippah. No pasuk about wearing a yarmulke. There's no mishnah about wearing a yarmulke. Is there a gemara? So we have a couple of gemaras. There's a gemara in Kedushin Daf Lamed Aleph that speaks about the story of Rav Huna. And he says, it's not really much of a story, but Rav Huna brother Rishuas, I think it was, says, I didn't go Dalad Amos Begilei Rosh. I never went 4 Amos without a kippah. Whoopie-doo, he never went 4 Amos without a kippah. We have another Gemara in Shabbos, where the same Rav Huna says, Tisili, give me schar, I'm the man. Why? Because I never went Dalad Amos with Gilei Rosh. I always wore a yarmulke. That seems a little strange. Moira is going to say, give me schar, I'm the man, because I never, I wear a yarmulke. If you would say, Tisli schari, I've been fasting Monday and Thursday for the last 40 years. Okay, that's when you get schar. Tisli schari, I never spoke a word of Lashon Hara. I get it. But what's Tisli schari for wearing a kippah, wearing a yarmulke? Everybody wears a yarmulke. What's the big deal? Why Tisli schari? So, before I tell you what the Kabbah says, I'm going to bring one more Gemara. I want to be equal. Let's learn all the Gemaras. So we have another Gemara in Shabbos Kuf Nun Vav, that the astrologers went to Reb Nachman, and they said, the mother of Reb Nachman, Reb Nachman wasn't born yet. The astrologers went to the mother of Reb Nachman and said, you know what, your son, we see, your son's going to be a Ganef. Sorry, that's how it is. No changing the mazals. The mazel of your son, he's going to be a ganef. So the mother of Nachman wanted to fight against that. She had 2 weapons against her son Reb Nachman becoming a ganef. Number 1, that she made sure that he will always have his head covered. He'll always have a yarmulke on. From day 1, he'll have his head covered. And number 2, that she davened that he'll have Yer Shemayim. And Kachaya, from day 1, Reb Nachman always wore a yarmulke, and the mother davened that she'll have Yer Shemayim, and Taka became Reb Nachman. There's a story that once Reb Nachman, his yarmulke fell off. He was under a tree. I think it was a date tree, if I remember correctly, and he jumped up and he bit the dates off somebody else's tree in an act of Geneva. Maybe he might have had some other problems of being a Baal Teva, maybe some other problems of not checking for bugs. I don't know exactly. But the point of the Gemara is, his natural mazel, his natural inner being was to be a ganef. It's the yarmulke that protected him, but without the protection, once the yarmulke fell off, he went straight to Geneva. So we see that Reb Nachman, there's something special about Reb Nachman, that Reb Nachman always wore a yarmulke. Zak the Kalba, you know what we see from these Gemaras? We see that, actually I'll just make a simple dig before the Kalba. I don't need the Kalba. We see that a yarmulke brings Yer Shemayim, because we can see from the story of Nachman, and we also see it wasn't normal to be makbid to always wear a yarmulke. I don't know, maybe they wore a yarmulke a little bit here, a little bit there, but it definitely wasn't something that everybody wore a yarmulke the whole time, because it wouldn't be a special thing that Rav Nachman wore a yarmulke, and it wouldn't be a special thing Rav Huna never went without a yarmulke. Whoopie-doo. No, obviously, it wasn't normal for somebody to never go without a yarmulke. And the pashtus is that they didn't wear a yarmulke. It sounds like the pashtus that most Amoraim and Tanoim walked around Gilei Rosh without a yarmulke. It's not mukhrach, but that's the pashtus. Zak the Kalbai says based on these Gemaras, there's no chiyuv to wear a yarmulke. No chiyuv for a kippah. Zak the Bir Agrai quotes many Gemaras where we see, this Tana was wearing a sudra and that Tana had a sudra, hair covering, whatever, head covering. But the Maaseh concludes we don't see anywhere a chiyuv, so there's no chiyuv to wear a yarmulke. The marshal was asked if somebody has a headache. Maybe he wants to learn. Could this person with a headache, does he have to wear a yarmulke? I guess, his yarmulke was heavy. It was hurting his head. As they know, he probably regrets saying this. The Chazon Ish didn't always wear his hat by Ma'ariv because after spending a whole day learning, his head was hurting so much he couldn't wear a hat. So in a similar way, the marshal was asked, somebody has a headache, does he have to wear a hat? Does he have to wear a yarmulke? And the marshal said, what do you want me to do? I don't know of any chiyuv to wear a yarmulke. And if the marshal says he doesn't know of a chiyuv to wear a yarmulke, that means there's no chiyuv to wear a yarmulke. But the marshal says, what can I do? Everybody wears a yarmulke, so I can't tell you it's usher to not wear a yarmulke. But he didn't want to give him that blanket heter to take off his yarmulke because l'maisa, it's what everybody did. Now, it happens to be that the Marsha learns the Gemara differently. So it's not everybody learns it that way. The Marsha learns, the story of Huna is, he's saying he wore an extra covering, like a Rabbanishtika, a kapata or something. He wore some extra different type of special Rabbanisha hat, and that was what's special about Rav Huna. But about that, everybody wore a yarmulke. That's the sheet of the Marsha, but that does not seem to be the general sheet of the Poskim. L'maisa, but there in Yoni Kabbalah, the Zohar says it's usher to go Dalet Amos without something covering your head, without a yarmulke. It's usher. You could die. It could cause you to die to go Dalet Amos without a yarmulke. We know that originally the Berachos HaShachar, we see from the Gemaras, the Berachos HaShachar, the way they used to work is you didn't just get to shul and make etc., 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 by each one. When you heard the rooster cock-a-doodle-doo, then you made the bracha l'havkim b'yom v'ein leila. Along the day, as each thing passed, that's when you make the bracha. So when does the Gemara say you make Oite Yisrael b'sefara? You make, when you put on your hat, that's the Teferes V'Yid. When you put on your hat, that's when you say Oite Yisrael b'sefara. Zokt. The Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek says, if the brach of Oit Yisrael b'Sefara was said when you put on your head covering, your hat, must be, it's a chiyuv to wear a hat. Because we wouldn't have made a bracha about Oit Yisrael b'Sefara, about putting a head covering on, if you didn't have a chiyuv of wearing a yarmulke, wearing a hat. However, this raya is certainly not mukhrach, because one could deflect the raya. It could just be that was the normal practice. That was general, that was regular, that you wore a hat. But that doesn't mean that there was a chiyuv, and I'll prove it to you. When do we make sha'asali called sarki? After putting on our shoes. Did anybody ever say there's a chiyuv to wear shoes? I never saw anywhere where there's a chiyuv to wear shoes. So just like, but it's just normal to wear shoes. So you make shasli kol tzarki when you put on shoes. So maybe it's normal to wear a hat. So you make Oit Yisrael b'Sefara when you put on a hat. And l'chayr, it doesn't prove it. The Sefer Chasidim says a yarmulke makes a Jew feel that Hashem is above. A Jew knows that Hashem is above. He has Yira Melekai, a yarmulke, from wearing a yarmulke on his head. So it's definitely a good idea, but that doesn't tell us that it's a chiyuv. The Shulchan Aruch says, and it's really based on the Gemara, that it's usher to go b'koyim zekufa. What does it mean, b'koyim zekufa? Like Baal Gaiva. It's usher to walk around b'koyim zekufa. Not many people know this, sister, and a lot of people do it. So it's usher to go around b'koyim zekufa. It's usher to walk around like a Baal Gaiva. V'lo yelech b'gilei rosh. And don't go b'gilei rosh. One more time. Osir to go b'koyim zekufa, and don't go b'gilei rosh. Zat the Chidah. The Chidah makes the obvious diak. When it comes to koyim zekufa, that's osir midaraisa. Forget the raisa. But that's osir. However, when it comes to gilei rosh, don't do it. Meaning it's advisable not to do, but it's not actually osir. The Mata Yehuda says, wait a second, no, he doesn't like the diak of the chidah. I do happen to like the diak of the chidah, but the Mata Yehuda does not like the diak of the chidah, and he learns it a little bit what I would say lav dafka, and he says when it says that you shouldn't go yolich begilei rosh, it's relying on the asur from the line before of kaim zekufa. It's kind of lav dafka, but it's a possibility. Okay. Furthermore, the Shulchan Aruch says yesh oimrim, quotes it as a yesh oimrim, that it's asur to say Hashem's name without a yarmulke. And it happens to be Masechta Soifrim. We see that there's Mekilim. I think it's Machlokes there, if I remember correctly. But there's Mekilim. L'maisa, the Truma Sedeshin says there's no Isser to say Shem Hashem without a kippah. Now, L'maisa, Rabbi Kiva Eger, the Marshal, the Gra, and the Pri Chodesh, so you can rely on the Mekilim, not a problem, to say Hashem's name without a yarmulke. Not a problem. It's allowed. However, L'maisa, who's our Rebbe? Those are great achronim, but our Rebbe is the Shulchan Aruch. And as I said a minute ago, the Shulchan Aruch said, you should not say Hashem's name without Begila Rosh. You should not say Hashem's name without a yarmulke. So L'maisa Tachlis, don't say Hashem's name without a yarmulke. However, let's say you're in a position you have a non-from guy in front of you, and you want to look like a good from Jew. He came to fix your fridge. He came to install your phone. I don't know, whatever it is. You want to offer him a cup of water, and he's not wearing a yarmulke. Sometimes you could even, especially if it's like one of these Sephardi guys, you could very often ask him, here's a kippah, here, make a bracha, but sometimes you can't ask him to, you can't ask him. Maybe you can ask him to make a bracha, but you can't ask him to wear a kippah sometimes. It will be awkward, whatever. You don't have to worry. You don't have to worry that you can ask him to make a bracha without a kippah, and it's okay. You could be soymich on all those shitas, the Pri Chodesh, the Gra, the Marshal, who say that you can say Hashem without a yarmulke. For yourself, be machmer, but in situations like that, one could be mekel. Okay, so far, according to most opinions, there's no chiyuv to wear a yarmulke when you walk around. However, it's midas chasidus, and not only is it midas chasidus, Zot Shulchan Aruch, it's advisable, it's the right thing, and you should do it. Now, technically, you can learn without a yarmulke, but l'maisa, it shouldn't be done. So l'maisa, it shouldn't be done. You shouldn't learn without a yarmulke. Here, by the way, the poskim say without a yarmulke, meaning let's say you're listening to a shiur. You're listening to this shiur right now without a yarmulke. Dude, put on a yarmulke! But if you don't put on a yarmulke, l'maisa, you're allowed to do it. So if for whatever reason you're not wearing a yarmulke right now, you're okay. Because by the way, a lot of my listeners don't wear yarmulkes. Because I think I have a nice amount of women that listen to this shiur. Okay, weiter. Now, the Marie Bruna says he was an early Akron, and he brings a whole new twist over here. He says that going out without a yarmulke, forget what the Gemara is talking about, going out without a yarmulke is the Isser B'chukoi Seim Loi Seilechu. You cannot go out like a guy. Goyim don't wear yarmulkes. Jews wear yarmulkes. Isser B'chukoi Seim Loi Seilechu. Zak the Taz, and the Taz was a couple hundred years later. He was early 1600s, and he says, removing your hat, removing your yarmulke is the Isser B'chukasim Loi Seilechu. You know, the Goyim, they used to take off, and they still do, take off their yarmulke when they went into church, or they went into the Goyim of Europe, when they went into church. I think the Taz was in Poland. They would take off their hats. That's Asur B'chukasim Loi Seilechu. Now, something very interesting that just happened. We just went from a midas chasidus, a good idea, to an isser deraisa to go begilei rosh. B'chukasei moiselechos, the isser deraisa. The isser just got upgraded. These chashav achronim aren't arguing on any mishnayos, gemaras, or anything. Times changed. Mitzias changed. It originally wasn't a goyish zach to take off your hat when you went to Avodah Zarah, but now it was a goyish zach to take off your hat when you went to the church, and therefore it becomes aser. Now we know when it comes to b'chukasei moiselechos, I've said many times in our shiurim that to be over b'chukasei moiselechos, you need to fit one of two criteria. It has to either be something that's based in pritzus or something that is without reason. There's no good logical explanation to why you're doing it. So, let's think about it. Which one was it? So I'm not really sure. It could have been either. Back in the day when people were more tsnua, so the idea of taking off your hat and being beer-headed, there was the element of pritzus to that. Even though you ask your average guy in the street right now, he won't understand what you're even talking about when you tell him that. But I think back then, if you could imagine everybody with fully covered, taking off your hat was an element of pritzus. Maybe, perhaps, I'm not sure. But I could hear it. Secondly, maybe it was without reason. Why are you wearing a hat? And when you go into the church, as a sign of kavod to the church, you take off your hat. What's the logic? What's the reason? What's the basis why that's an act of kavod? So I couldn't find a good answer. I found like a chatzi answer that apparently, the knights, when they would go in front of their prince or lord or whatever it was, they would take off their armor, their head armor, which would, so to speak, be showing the prince, if they wanted to, they could just chop off their heads. Because when they're wearing the armor, they can't. So it was some element of submission. But that was one theory that I found. It doesn't seem like it's a clear mukhrach idea. Okay. But maybe. Okay, so now Lemaisa. Let's get a little bit more practical nowadays. So why did the goyim ever take off their hats? We look at the pictures from the 20s, the 30s, the 40s in America, in Europe. All the goyim are wearing hats. What happened? Why did the goyim take off their hats? So the historians claim, it makes sense. Apparently it was like this. Originally, you never ever have a president not wear a hat. A chush of a president needs to wear a hat. When presidents used to have self-respect, remember that? So you had to wear a hat. Comes along JFK, and Kennedy is the first president that he shows up without a hat. And apparently shortly after, everybody stopped taking off their hats. For sure the young people all started taking off their hats. It totally changed the trend. It used to be everybody wore hats, and now people didn't wear hats. He was the mover in taking off your hats. Now, some claim that idea of taking off their hats ushered in the pritzus of the 60s, the hippie movement, the prikus oil, the changing from that modest environment of the 50s to the 60s. Some say that was ushered in by JFK taking off his hat. Now, it's a nice theory, and I'm not saying it's not true, but it's pretty hard to prove. Maybe it is true. Or maybe the style just changed with hats. It's a little bit hard to know. Lamaisa, Ramosha was Mekel by Tzarech, and he says that B'chukasayim doesn't apply nowadays. Why? Because you ask a guy in the 70s, even this guy 15 years ago, he was wearing a hat. But you ask him today in the early 70s when Moshe wrote this tshuva, why are you wearing a hat anymore? He's probably going to say it's not in style anymore. But why do you want to wear it? It's not so comfortable. It's not in style anymore. That doesn't sound like b'chukasayim lo silechu. That's a good, very logical reason. You know what? There's no iser b'chukasayim lo silechu to wear pants. You know why? Well, pants were invented by a guy, and Moshe Rabbeinu didn't wear pants. Yeah, but wearing pants makes sense. So why doesn't this guy wear a hat? Because he doesn't want to wear a hat. It's not comfortable. That makes sense. Whoever wears a black hat outside when it's windy knows it makes a lot of sense not to have a wet black hat. If you wanted to make it like a beanie in the winter, that would make sense. A black hat with a big rim, I'm telling you, that doesn't make sense. It's annoying. And yarmulkes flying all over the place. I understand why the goyim don't wear it. It makes perfect sense why the goyim don't wear it. And if it makes perfect sense, so where's the Isser B'chukasayim? And Dr. Moshe, once again, he doesn't say it as a mukhrach idea. He does rely on it in certain heterim cases, but he's definitely noted to say that this Isser B'chukasayim does not apply anymore. Okay, so what's going on? So no more yarmulke? Is that what we're going to do? What's going on? No more yarmulke? Moshe says, there's no, there's a midas chasidus, it's not a gemara. Maybe I'm not a chassid. No b'chukas same anymore. Do I still need to wear a kippah? Do I still need to wear a yarmulke? Dr. Moshe, yeah, you have to wear a yarmulke. Why? Why? What do I have to? Minhag Yisrael halachi. Wearing a kippah, wearing a yarmulke is a universally accepted minhag Yisrael. It's such a minhag Yisrael that it's the sign of being a from Yid. You ask a guy, you can even ask a Chiloini. What's this story? Can you define for me, what does a religious Jewish man look like? What's a from Yid look like? And they'll say, yeah, the first thing they'll probably say is, he wears a kippah, he wears a yarmulke. So this is what defines a Jew. And if this defines a Jew, that means it's the most universal, greatest minhag Yisrael. And if it's a minhag Yisrael, it's binding. You have to keep it. Minhag Yisrael, halachahi, it's a chiyuv to keep this minhag Yisrael. So you see, we just went through 3 stages in history. It started off as a good idea, minhag chasidus, Yerushalayim. Then it went to being Isser, Deraisa, or B'chukas Le'Salechu. And now it's transitioned into being a minhag Yisrael. Now, it's very interesting. I heard, originally it wasn't the minhag Yisrael, seemingly. Bisman Gemara, it sounds like most people were not wearing yarmulkes. And now, eventually, it turned into minhag Yisrael. It's kind of very interesting. I heard a very interesting theory on this. I can't prove it, but it's definitely an interesting theory. You realize Bisman Gemara, I'm going to tell you something that might throw you off a little bit. We see from Gemaras, regular people, regular good Jews, they wore tefillin all day. Not just the Talmidei Chachamim learning in the yeshivas. The regular carpenter and the regular shoemaker, he would go to work wearing tefillin. And he probably did not wear a yarmulke. Yeah, cool. He wore tefillin, but probably didn't wear a yarmulke. Pretty wild, huh? Now, eventually, as time went on, the minhag became, but that was, everybody knew he was a Jew, he was wearing tefillin, right? And as time went on, the minhag became not to wear tefillin throughout the day. For whatever reason, we guf naki, we'll forget that you're wearing it, etc. So we stopped wearing tefillin all day. But now, how do you see that a guy is a Jew? So I heard a theory that maybe at the time that we stopped wearing tefillin, maybe that's when we started wearing a yarmulke. So we need a sign that we are a Yid. I think it's a fascinating idea. Once again, I can't prove it. Okay, now I think it might be, which is interesting, the Sephardim, they skipped the stage 2. The Sephardim went from Midas Chasidus, good idea. They never had B'chukas Le'Salechu. The Sephardi countries, the Arabs, they never took off their head covering to go into a mosque. So they went straight from being a Midas Chasidus to being the minhag. And by the way, maybe that's a basis. I don't know whether it's a limit schus or a real basis, but there's some Sephardim, maybe in some more modernish communities, that don't wear yarmulke in the street. They go into a Beit Knesset, they're obviously going to wear a yarmulke, a kippah for sure. But in the street, no. Now it might make sense, because they never had the issue of B'chukas, and therefore it was Midas Chasidus, and the minhag, maybe the minhag was never to wear outside in those countries. Rav Moshe was asked that is someone allowed to take a job, that a criteria to take this job is no kippah. You want to work here? No kippah. Could he take the job? And Rav Moshe says, L'maisa, Pash, it's not B'chukas Le'Salechu, it doesn't apply anymore. It's minhag, so we treat it like a mitzvah. Say, you should wear a kippah, and you're not chayiv to give up more than 1/6 of your nechasim, your property, your possessions, to keep a mitzvah. Say, not taking a job is like giving up 1/6 of your possessions, and therefore you could take the job and not wear a kippah at work. Now, I think some people take this heter of Moshe too far. Why? Because Moshe didn't say a blanket rule. You don't have to wear a kippah at work. If you're allowed to wear it, you have to wear it. If you're a little embarrassed to wear it, You have to wear it. It's just that if you can't get the job, you don't have to wear it. And he said, furthermore, if you're alone by yourself in the office, you have to wear it. And if you're going to make a bracha or daven or say a little Torah, you have to wear it. It's only at the time of work when you're in front of people that you're not allowed to get the job if you have that kippah. But l'maisa, in the right circumstances, he said you could take that job and not wear a yarmulke at work. The Dembetziner Rav, the Be'er Moshe, who is the, I guess you call it the Hasidic counterpart in Borough Park of Rav Moshe. So he said, no. He wasn't so quick. As we know, the Hasidim are always more makbid than the Litvish, than the Litvish, generally. As we see in their garb, their beards, etc. So, Zak the Dembetziner, no! You cannot take that job, because it's a son, maybe it's a deraisa. Ramosha says it doesn't apply anymore, because let's face it, the goyim aren't dafka taking it off. The goyim just don't wear it, it's comfortable. Zak Dembetziner Rav, the goyim still take it off to go into church. And I think it's still true today. The goyim take off their hats when they go into church. And if the goyim are still taking off their hats, if they wore a baseball cap that day, even though it's true most of them don't wear a hat generally. But let's say the guy is wearing a hat that day. He's wearing a baseball hat. He'll take it off to go to church. So that Choik HaGoyim is still alive and well. And if that Choik HaGoyim is still alive and well, we can't be so quick to say it's not B'chukasem L'Sleichu to go bareheaded. And therefore the Dembetziner wasn't masking to the heter or Moshe. And by the way, just one more point that I forgot to mention. Moshe says, if somebody's not wearing a yarmulke, he can't say Shalom Aleichem. He can't say Shemesh. Shalom is one of the Shemesh of Hashem. You can't say it without a yarmulke. And you can't say, if somebody's not wearing a yarmulke, you can't say to him Shalom Aleichem, which will cause him to answer Aleichem Shalom. So he wasn't quite as makel as people say. There was an interesting shayla asked to Moshe, whether we should be in favor of, there was at that point when, New York still had a little religion left in it. So there were people that wanted to institute in public school a school prayer. Meaning everybody in school at the beginning of the day in public school, the goyim, the Jews, whoever was in public school, will go and daven, pray to the God. Everybody could pray to their own God and say, please God, give me a good day and make everybody healthy and whatever. So they asked Rav Moshe, should the position of the front people be in favor of implementing this tefillah or not? So Rav Moshe said, a yid in public school, he's getting no education, let him at least daven to Hashem once a day. So Rav Moshe was in favor of implementing such a tefillah in public schools. Now, people ask, what do you mean? These boys are not wearing a yarmulke. How could they daven? Moshe said, we have all these people to rely on. The Pri Chadash, the Marshal, the Gra, etc. That you could say Shem Hashem and you could say tefillah without having your head covered. It's much better to rely on these opinions and have a Yid daven than have these Jewish kinder never daven. So he was in favor of it. L'maisa, let's say somebody makes a bracha. Could you say amen? You're in the pool. No yarmulke. So somebody says a bracha, could you say amen? The Pechacha says yes, you could say amen. Rav Elyashiv says yes, you could say amen. I believe, if I remember correctly, Rav Chaim Kanievsky, I think, says you cannot say amen, but I'm not positive about that. Now, L'maisa, one thing I do remember, Rav Chaim Kanievsky says, don't say a bracha aloud in front of people in the pool. Don't get them into a matzav where it's a suffix whether or not they're supposed to answer amen. So if you're on the side of the pool, don't make a big loud bracha to put the people in a matzav of suffix. I don't know if the Pechacha and Rav Elyashiv would agree with that. The Chayra, the Pechacha and Rav Elyashiv would say you could make the loud bracha. I forgot one thing about Rav Elyashiv. Rav Elyashiv said you should, even though we generally don't rely on your own hand as a kippah, but he says, let's say you're in the pool in that matzav, put your hand on your head and say amen, because you might be able to say amen even with nothing, so I guess your hand is better than nothing. Okay, now what if you don't have a kippah? So the Truma Sedeshet says anything counts as a kippah, anything you can put a cup on your head, whatever it is, doesn't make a difference, it all counts as a yarmulke, a tissue, whatever it is, anything except your hand. Now, somebody else's hand, your sleeve, that all works. How big does a yarmulke need to be? Is there a share? What's the size? So Shlomo Kluger says a kippah needs to cover roiv harosh, most of your head. Chazon Ish says the same thing. A kippah needs to cover most of your head. Rav Ovadia Yosef says it has to be noticeable on all four sides. It has to be big enough that you can see it on all four sides. So the Fivem, does the Naphtali Bennett Yarmalka count? L'chayra not. Zaktra Moshe. Moshe says no, there's no shear for a kippah. No shear. It has to be whatever it's going to be viewed by people that you're wearing a yarmulke, that you're wearing a head covering. It has to be noticeable by people, and they have to look at it and see you're wearing a kippah. And he has a raya. What's his raya? His raya is, remember the Trumas Hadeshin that we said? Somebody else's hand can cover your head. So if somebody else's hand is less than roiv of your head, and it works. So you see it doesn't need to be roiv. The Chazon Ish deflects from Moshe's raya and says, no, it means two hands. And if you cover somebody's head with two hands, then it will be roiv rosh. But the pashas of the Trumas Hadeshin was certainly one hand. V'tzarech in. So the Mesa, I guess, probably the Naphtali Bennett yarmulke will be okay according to Rav Moshe, even though I don't know if you could really see it from all over. It's unclear, but it seems it's noticeable. People know he's wearing one. So the pashtus, it would be okay based on Rav Moshe. Interesting idea. The Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says your yarmulke should be black because that's the color of humility. That's the color of anivus, and therefore it should be black. Okay. Now, interesting question. Why don't women wear a kippah? So married women, it's not much of a kasha. Married women have to cover their hair. If they have to cover their hair, they're doing kisarish. So that's not a kasha. Single women. Why don't single women have to wear a yarmulke? So just to point out, as Rav Ovadia and Tzitz Eliezer say for the Sfardim, that they at least they have the minhag of the Sfardim apparently. I don't know if this is Lamaisa, I'm not sure, but it's definitely written by Rav Ovadia that they cover their hair for davening and for brachas. So there is some idea of a kippah for women. Now, why don't Ashkenazi circles, why don't women cover their hair? And by the way, I think there's a Ben Ish Chai that says women, even single women, should cover their hair from age 3. But I do not think that is the minhag in most circles. Okay, so why don't single women need to cover their hair in regular Ashkenazi circles? So the Chassam Sofer, he just speaks it out a little history. It originally started Midas Chasidus, and the women weren't into the Midas Chasidus. Fine. Then it became B'chukasem Leisalechu. That's why you have to cover your hair. That rule was never said by the women. There was never a chiyuv for women to take off their hats in church. And by the way, I looked it up, and it seems to be that's the real deal. There was no idea of women taking off their hats in church, and it only applied to men, and therefore there was no b'chukei seim l'sleicha of a woman not covering her hair. And number 3 is that, then it became the minhag, but it never became the minhag by women. So therefore, there's no real reason for women to wear a kippah. Okay. Does one need to wear a yarmulke when he's in the mikvah? Now, obviously not when he's dipping in the mikvah. Because when he's dipping in the mikvah, he can't have any chatzitzas, whatever. But does he have to wear a yarmulke till he goes right up to the mikvah? So the Bechor Shar says no. Why? He said if it's a place where there's no inyan of sneas, then there's no inyan of kippah. It's some form of kal v'chomer. You could really debate this kal v'chomer. There's mucking for pircha of the kal v'chomer, but he says that if there's no inyan sneas, there's no inyan kippah. So that's what I think is normally accepted. What about a pool or a water park? By a pool or a water park, do you have to wear a kippah? So obviously we're talking about a water park that's rented out for just men, because if not, it's completely usher altogether, and there's nothing to talk about. So do you have to wear a kippah? So let's think about it. Midas Chasidus, would it be Midas Chasidus? Yeah, but okay, you don't want to do it for now. Seder. Would it be b'chukas same leisleichu? No. It's completely logical. Everybody agrees it's logical not to wear a yarmulke by a pool or water park. It's very complicated. It makes perfect sense not to wear a yarmulke by a pool or water park. And nobody would do it. Now, minog, l'chayr, it's not the minog. L'chayr, there's no minog of wearing a yarmulke by the pool and the water park. However, I would add, it's still a mitzvah chasidus, and it will still bring Yiras Shamayim. And one thing by the pool, but especially by the water park, you can be walking around for hours and hours at the park, and you're going to spend most of the time waiting online. L'chayr, it's a good idea. I once saw these people with like kippahs with straps around. Guys, chevra, you don't have to look weird, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's something called a bandana. Take a bandana, tie it around your head like this. You could tell everybody, when I was 20 and I played football, that used to be cool. So maybe it's not cool anymore to wear a bandana, but it used to be cool. So you find the bandana, you tie it on, and you're able to be Mekayim Midas Chasidus. You're able to get yourself some Yiras Shamayim. And furthermore, online, I'm not saying you have to be doing it the whole time. You should say a little Divrei Torah while sitting online for, hours. So, once again, I'm not saying if you don't have it, maybe you could be making and say Divrei Torah, but certainly the Shulchan Aruch really, the Marshal says you could get away with Divrei Torah without it, but it's certainly best to be wearing a kippah for Divrei Torah, so it's not a bad idea. I advise wearing a bandana when you go to the water park, but it's for sure not a chiyuv. Now, what is the problem walking Dalet Amos, or is the problem being without a kippah? What exactly is the problem? Nafkamina. Let's say my kippah fell off and it flew 7 Amos away. Right? Do I wait until somebody's passing by and he's going to get it for me, and therefore I won't walk Dalet Amos? Or do I go right now, right away, and get it quickly, even though I walk Dalet Amos? If it's an Inyan and don't walk Dalet Amos, let me wait for somebody to get it. But if it's an Inyan that you should be wearing a kippah, so then I should be wearing a kippah, and I should just go get it right away. So the Mace of the Mari Bruna says it's about Yiras Shamayim, and you should get it quickly. The Bechar Shar as well says the Dalet Amos is Lav Dafka, get it quickly. Alright, so why does the Gemara in 2 places say Dalet Amos if it's not a din Dalet Amos? Dalet Amos is just the Gemara's way of saying a short amount of time. The time to walk Dalet Amos is very quick. So the Gemara's way of saying don't be a short, his Ma'ila was he didn't go a short amount of time without a kippah, was saying Dalet Amos, but it's not really an inyan of walking Dalet Amos, it's more of an inyan of keeping your head covered. Now, is there a difference between indoors and outdoors? Is one more makel than the other? So, the Marshal brings a shita that the Isser might only apply outdoors, but indoors there might be no chiyuv of kippah. The Maisa, the Pri Megadim, the El Yerabe, and the Mishnah Berurah, they all reject this opinion that the Marshal brought, and they all say there's no difference indoors and outdoors. And I'm going to add, once we're bringing B'chukas Seim Le'Sleichu, and the original B'chukas Seim Le'Sleichu is the Goyim taking off their kippahs, taking off their yarmulkes when they went from outdoors to indoors, an argument could be made that there's a bigger chiyuv indoors than outdoors. So I think we certainly can have no room to rely on that Marshal. Does one need to go to sleep with a kippah? So the Mishnah Berurah quotes the Shlah Kaddish, who says that it's a good idea, it's advisable to go to sleep with the yarmulke. I can't say it's a chiyuv, but I could say it's a good idea. There's a Gemara that says the kids always went begiloi rosh. That implies that they never wore a yarmulke altogether, kids. Sounds from the Pashas of the Gemara, it's even up to bar mitzvah, they would always go with revealed head. And by the way, some treat this like very dafkadik. We have the minhag in Ashkenazi circles at least. A kid does not put a talus over his head, because a kid's not meant to have a talus over his head. There's some element of gilui rosh of a kid. Now, so from when should they start wearing a kippah? So the minhag is that kids do wear kippahs. From what age? So Chaim Kanievsky said, from when they won't throw it off. I know the minhag is many people start from 3. 3 is a very common accepted minhag. That's when people start wearing a kippah. And once again, at the end of the day, I'm saying this is based on minhag. So if at the end of the day, the main thing is minhag, so that's a good time to start. If the kid will leave it on. I remember going to baseball games as a kid, and they used to, when they would sing the national anthem, the minhag was you would take off your baseball cap and you hold it over here for the national anthem. As a sign of respect or something like that, you take off your hat. Is that allowed? So, this I'm very scared of. Why in the world are we taking off our hat? What's the point of taking off your hat? Well, it's a sign of respect. Okay, sign of respect. But why is that respectful? Why is it respectful to take off your hat? When I go to Ramosha Sternbach, when I go to Rav Dov Landau, when I go to whoever, pick your political party, but when I go to your whatever gadol, I'm going to wear my hat. Why is it respect taking off my hat? It gets me nervous that there's a little b'chukasem leisalechu in that. Listen, I'm not comfortable with the idea of removing your hat for the national anthem. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you have to go and kneel on the 50-yard line, Hamei v'nyovin. But to go and say that, maybe if somebody may tell you it's a chil Hashem, if you don't take off your hat, you're not respecting the national anthem. Well, one answer is don't go to a sports game, because it's not so simple that that's allowed either, but that's not the topic for now. So maybe get lost, go under, go where they sell stuff, the bathroom or whatever during the national anthem. Anyways, there's a 50% chance of it being Kol Isha, which is usher to listen to anyways. So get lost for the national anthem so you don't get into a matzav where you have to take off your hat, because I don't think that is cool. I'm choshish that's isser of b'chukasem leisalechu. And once again, there's a very interesting thing. Starts off as Midas Chassidus, turns into B'chukasem leisalechu, and then turns into a minhag that everybody has to keep. Quite fascinating. Thanks for listening and have an amazing week.